something. A friend, a mentor for life, sensible, solid, steady as a rock. Terrorizes you initially.
Terrorized them.
But makes everyone feel special. So now you look back at your mentoring journey, you've launched so many successful careers and they're still part of your life. I mean,
Of course.
so how has this enriched your life?
They taught me something that nobody else could teach me. No book could teach me. No experience in life could teach me. And the average age was 21. When I was 45. When I was about 40. So, what I learned from them was something that you cannot put a price on. I learned how to be young. What they learned from me was only a craft, a discipline, attention to detail. But what I learned from them was that I could be young forever.
You know, in today's time of political correctness, you'd be an HR team's nightmare. Your initiation process for young female employees in your team, you'd give them a dildo. You use terms like certified virgin. Sorry if this is PG-13. Yet you were the most loved boss ever. So, you know, and you created this entrepreneurial spirit in the youth. So, what is the key ingredient? It's not nepotism, it's in their DNA, or is this to be learned?
No. Entrepreneurship is to go beyond fear. There can be no entrepreneur in the world who is afraid of failing. And the biggest problem in this country is that we teach our children to be afraid of failing or to be ashamed of failing. And that is why we have such few entrepreneurs. Everybody looks for a job. Nobody wants to start their own business because they are afraid to fail. And we taught them how to fail with grace. And that failing is not failing until you say yourself, I have failed. As long as you keep coming back and doing it again and again and again until you succeed, you have not failed.
Wonderful.
And we used to reward people who used to fail. We used to reward them.
You know, you defy the stereotype that's there that men can't multitask. Because you juggle not one but 12 different hats. I mean, the list is long, and we already read some of it, from a production house to a dhaba to a restaurant. I mean, how do you manage to do all these 12 to 14 things simultaneously? We barely can do two.
Two things. I have a very strong female side. Because I was brought up by my mother. My father died when I was 9 years old. So I was brought up by a very strong woman, all by herself, and my sister. So I have a very strong affinity and a very strong understanding of the female side. And multitasking is something that comes naturally to women. They can handle 3-4 jobs simultaneously without dropping the ball. So I could manage that. But the key to my multitasking was I always found the right people to run the business for me. Always. So I didn't have to run it myself. I just found the right people to run it. They were passionate, highly motivated, and to them it was love's labor. So they just did it.
But you give most of those jobs to women.
Lot of them, but some men.
You know, there was this, if you remember in Bangalore, I was sitting with a friend of mine and he was reading your book and he sent me, and I told him I'm doing this again. And he wrote to me this, he said, what really struck me about Prahlad was his ability to appreciate the beauty in women, yet be so respectful towards them. Not a trait a brown man carries well. So that's a little bit of a shout out to you.
Well, as I said, I was brought up by my mother. She taught me how to respect women because she single-handedly brought both of us up, which was quite a task.
You know, Prahlad, we've got to keep 15 minutes for audience Q&A. So I'm going to just do the one wrap-up question, then open it up to the audience, and I'll come back. I have lots more to talk to you about if I can. You know, times are changing. You know, technology is changing. There's now generative AI, upcoming trends. What do you think this is doing for the advertising business or industry as we knew it?
See, the business of filmmaking and advertising is creativity. If you don't read, you cannot be creative. If you only spend 6 hours on social media, you cannot be creative. You are dumbing down everything. So if you don't cultivate the habit of reading, you can never use your imagination. You can never fire your imagination. So the difference between then, in our time, and now is that young people have stopped reading. And what they do is they copy paste from what they see. So nothing is original. And they have lost the art of storytelling. So they think technology can replace stories. It's not true. Technology can only grab you for that instant. After that, it's eminently forgettable. If you're going to use stories, if you're going to use technology in your stories, it has to be invisible. You cannot see, arey, kya special effect kiya hai. You have to turn around and say, man, how did Spielberg make those dinosaurs in that park? They look so real. How did he do it? How is the question? Not wow, this is technology. So, always remember, king is always content. King is always storytelling. If you lose track of your stories, you have no engagement.
I'm sure the audiences are thinking, ye dil mange more, so I'm going to open it up to some questions. Do we have some in the audience? Can you give her a mic?
Sharing your insights. I'm currently also studying sociology, and when you explained about the incident where your team noticed the rebellious nature in youth, so I wanted to ask you that as a storyteller or as a content creator, how important would it be for me to learn sociology? Because sometimes I feel it makes you very critical and technical in your view of society.
No,
so yes.
Sociology is the story of people. How they've evolved from the caveman to what they are today. So what were these leaps that they made without creativity, without stories? So even sociology, if you look at the great progress that we made in a very short time, it was either during war or during discovery of themselves and their stories. And when they told their stories, everybody else got inspired by them. And that is what sociology is, because you copy and follow somebody else's life and learn from it because of the story of his life and what progress he has made. So when you look at the human beings, from the caveman to what he is today, it's a story. And I'd advise everybody to read a series of books written by an anthropologist. Her name is M.M. Aul, A-E-U-L. And she wrote the Earth series books on Neanderthal man and the evolution of that. And the adventure stories about a woman. How she broke out of that mold, how she broke rules, how she learned to hunt, because women were not allowed to hunt, only men were allowed to hunt. Women were only cooks and bottle washers and bringing up children. So it's the story of the progress of man and women. And if you read a series, the first book is called The Clan of the Cave Bear. The second is called The Valley of the Horses. And the third is called Pillars of Stone. So if you read it, you'll understand more about sociology and anthropology than any textbook can ever give you. So if Mr. Dalrymple is here,
Yes.
okay, he has changed the way we read our history. You know, we talk about dates, battles, people, and that's it. There's no flesh and blood to the stories. There's no real material for you to take away and learn something from it except by rote. And when you learn something by rote for your exam, you vomit it out and you forget about it. Now I have a question for the audience here. If you read history, if Clive had lost the Battle of Plassey, what language would I be speaking? What language would you be speaking?
Anyone?
Does anybody remember the Battle of Plassey between Clive and Sirajuddaula for Bengal? And after he won, he set up the East India Company in Calcutta and it ruled this country from there. Okay, the beginning of British rule was the Battle of Plassey. So if he had lost the Battle of Plassey, what language would you be speaking?
Urdu.
No. See, there was a world power that was fighting the British at that time in the world. Napoleon came up, fought the British, and so did a lot of French people. So the French were supporting Sirajuddaula. And if Sirajuddaula had won, their influence would have been tremendous. We'd be speaking French, like they do in Mauritius. Okay, now, how many characters came out of that battle? There was Robert Clive, there was Sirajuddaula, there was the British, there was the French, and there was a man called Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar was paid by the British to betray Sirajuddaula halfway through the battle because he was his commander-in-chief. And forever, every traitor is today called Mir Jafar.
Another question, guys?
Which gives you a lot of satisfaction in directing. And the second one, you have a program in Lalljii called Lakka Dives. What is the current state of the reefs there in Lalljii? Is it properly conserved?
Well, suddenly there's a lot of interest in Lalljii, thank God, thanks to the Prime Minister going snorkeling there. But Lalljii are very fragile islands and I don't think we can go headlong into development of those islands without completely destroying them. So it has to be done step by step. There is no doubt that tourism is a very big deal in the Lalljii. There's a possibility, there's huge potential. But not mass tourism. Very highly specialized tourism. Water sports, diving, snorkeling, fish life, fishing. So it is high income, low impact. You have to control the carbon footprint in Lalljii. Otherwise the islands will disappear. So mass tourism is out of the question. It has to be very high-end tourism like in the Maldives. Most people can't afford the Maldives because they pitch themselves so high. But the Maldives are not like Lalljii. Maldives are not so fragile. They have 1,500 islands. We have only 14. So it's limited to how much traffic you can put out there regardless of the infrastructure. And as far as, what was the first question?
The ad.
Favorite.
Your favorite ad you do.
Well, you know, it's like this. If you had 100 illegitimate children, who would you favor? Who would be your favorite?
The first.
Not necessarily. Usually it's the last. The youngest child is always the favorite child.
So what was your last ad you were in love with?
I think it was one with Amitabh Bachchan where he made for the Environmental Ministry.
Wonderful. Is there any other questions? You know, he stole my thunder because I had this whole closing section on favorites. Because you know how I like to do my rapid fire with you, so this time I thought I'd make it a little different. You know, your life story is so eventful that we'll never run out of the stories to discuss. So given the constraint of time, we can end this wonderful session with a rapid fire of his favorites. And since Prahlad has confessed that he's a terrible liar, so we know that these answers will be true and interesting. So I'm just going to read out a category and you just tell me what that is. Favorite book?
My favorite book is Wilbur Smith. All of Wilbur Smith's books because they're adventure stories, but they give you the history of South Africa from Zulu Wars upwards. So I learned everything about South Africa's history through Wilbur Smith's book. I learned everything about anthropology through M.M. Aul's book.
Author. Author.
Author Wilbur Smith and M.M. Aul.
Alright. And what about, I thought dispatches showed up when you...
Dispatches was something
Michael
that
Hare.
influenced me a lot as far as the style of my book writing was concerned, because it was not necessarily chronological. I was jumping time in chapters and going forward and backwards. And Dispatches was a book that I had read about the Vietnam War, written by a journalist. And there were short stories about human beings in a state of war. And Dispatches left a huge impact on me, of the way he had written them, because they were so engaging. They were not about winning and losing a war. It was about human beings caught in a war, not of their own making.
Now these are going to be difficult. Your favorite model?
My favorite model has always been Aishwarya Rai, because I discovered her. And I always knew her potential, and nobody else did. And for a long time they thought she couldn't act, that she was cold, that she was so beautiful that she was, impractical. But I believed that she would overcome all that, and she did.
But she's the model who turned actress. But your favorite actress?
My favorite actress is actually Tabu. Because she's amazing as an actress. She immerses herself in the character totally. So if you see her rendition of Macbeth as Lady Macbeth, by God, it's better than the original.
Sport. Sport.
My favorite sport is actually horse polo. But I haven't been able to practice it a lot because I have a sciatic problem and my age does not permit me to play polo, because it is a very, very rigorous horse riding sport. But it's the king of all sports. It's like playing hockey on a horse.
Your favorite sports person?
My favorite sports person is Sachin Tendulkar. Because he had focus, determination, and he never had any contact. He came from a very low middle class home. He wasn't born into money. He had to struggle for everything, and he had to prove his mettle on the field, not outside of it. And the manner in which he arrived was without any blot on his career, as being either ungentlemanly or being corrupt or being open to being paid or fixing or anything. If you look at his career life, it's blemishless.
Animal. Snoopy the snake? No.
No, my favorite animal is actually the horse.
The horse.
And then it's the tiger.
Food. Food.
My favorite food